It was plain to me that irregardless of what the mark was, it was considered to be a sign of allegiance to the beast, since all are forced to receive this mark in their hand or their forehead, and if they don't, they cannot buy or sell. But I knew that there was more to it. The question for me was, what is that sign? What act of designation is it that gives allegiance to the beast? And why is it so heinous that those who receive it will be sentenced to the lake of fire with the devil and his angels? Shortly after I became a Christian, I was intensely interested in the mark of the beast and went about trying to decode the prophecy without even understanding who the beast was. It was frustrating because people would throw out guesses or speculation, but I wanted something tangible, something that was straight from the Bible. I was open to all views and considered them, but all novels, movies, pastors, and theologians just made guesswork of the prophecy that only made it more mysterious rather than more clear. So here is one thought that got me thinking in an entirely new direction, and that really helped me find the answer that I was searching for. And that was this: if the mark of the beast is the sign of allegiance to the beast, then perhaps there was a mark or sign of allegiance to God that would designate those who worship and pay homage to Him. And there was, and it's called the seal of God. The Apostle John wrote about his vision of those who had the seal, saying, "And I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God, and he cried with a loud voice to the four angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." So those who receive this seal belong to God, and receiving this seal protects them from the outpouring of the 7 last plagues to come upon the earth. And that is why the angels were commanded, "Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads." Like the word mark, a seal is also a sign or symbol of something. Paul wrote in Romans, "And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of the righteousness of the faith which he had, yet being uncircumcised." The word sign and seal are both used here interchangeably to describe the same thing. So the seal of God is just as much a sign of God and a sign of those who belong to Him. So then, what is the seal or sign of those who belong to God? Once again, we will allow God Himself to tell us what His sign is, so there is no guesswork, no speculation, and we can be 100% confident that we are not mistaken. In Exodus 31:13, God spoke, saying, "Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you." Clearly, God said the Sabbath was a sign between God and His people, that He was the God that sanctifies them. In Ezekiel 20:20, God says again, "And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God." In this statement, the Sabbath is also declared to be a sign between God and His people, but this time it is said to be a sign whereby His people are to recognize that He specifically is their God. The Sabbath is also a memorial of the fact that God created the earth. In the commandment itself, God gives a reason for this command of rest and says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." Therefore, since the words sign and seal have the same meaning, and because the Sabbath was given to be a sign between God and His people, that they might know that He is their God, we can see that the 7th-day Sabbath is the seal of God, a sign of designation that, when obeyed, shows that we worship, obey, and belong to the one who created the heavens and the earth. The commandment itself also contains all the elements of a seal. It contains the name of the one in authority, here referring to the Lord. It contains His title or office of authority, referring to Him as the Creator, the one who made. And then we find the third element of a seal, the dominion over which the Creator is claiming authority, which is the heaven and the earth and the sea. The Sabbath therefore contains all the elements of a seal, showing that the Sabbath commandment is the seal of God, making the observance of the 7th-day Sabbath an outward sign that we recognize the authority of the one who made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is. The Sabbath is the fourth commandment of the Ten Commandments, and when I read these next verses considering the Ten Commandments of God's law, it really got me thinking about the mark of the beast, and for good reason. In Exodus 13:9, the Lord said, "It shall be for a sign unto thee upon thine hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes, that the Lord's law may be in thy mouth." Again in Deuteronomy, he says concerning his commandments, allegiance to the power which he chooses to obey instead of God. The mark of the beast crisis all comes down to obedience. Who we obey is who we serve. So whose servant are you? If you belong to the Creator of the heavens and the earth, then obey his Sabbath on the seventh day of the week. And if you keep the Sabbath on the first day of the week, then you show by your obedience to the Roman Church that you believe they really do have the divine authority they claim to have changed God's law. And when the decision is enforced by law, if you obey the words of men above the word of God, you will receive the mark of allegiance to the Antichrist power, the mark of the beast. The push for legislating Sunday began as far back as the 4th century with the decree of Constantine, who issued a decree saying, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and the people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." Not long after Constantine sanctioned Sunday as a day of rest, the Catholic Church in 364 AD recapitulated the same, saying Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath, but must work on that day, rather honoring the Lord's Day, if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any shall be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ. It's worth noting that not only will there be a law making Sunday a mandatory day of rest, but there will eventually be a law making the true seventh-day Sabbath a day of work, just like Pharaoh did in Egypt when he forced the Hebrews to make bricks without straw. The decree was intentionally designed to double their workload, forcing them to labor on the Sabbath. In Exodus chapter 5 and verse 5, Pharaoh addresses Moses, and Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens." The word for rest there means to keep the Sabbath, and in response to their Sabbath keeping, Pharaoh responded, "And Pharaoh commanded the same day the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick, as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves." And when Pharaoh had made a decree forcing God's people to violate the Sabbath, then the plagues fell upon Egypt. At the end of time, meaning in the near future, we will see the same process. After Sunday laws are enforced through legislation, eventually there will be laws demanding everyone to work on the seventh-day Sabbath. At that time it may be said, "It is time for thee, Lord, to work, for they have made void thy law." When the laws of man make void the law of God, Satan will cross a line and God will intervene, sending the 7 last plagues. Sunday laws are not foreign to modern America. In the United States, blue laws are laws enforcing Sunday rest. These laws were held in high regard in colonial America. In Virginia in 1610, the law stated, "Every man and woman shall repair in the morning to the divine service and sermons preached upon the Sabbath," meaning Sunday, "and in the afternoon to divine service, and catechizing upon pain for the first fault to lose their provision and the allowance for the whole week following. For the second, to lose the said allowance and also be whipped, and for the third, to suffer death." The death penalty for violating the Sunday law also existed in Massachusetts and Connecticut, while New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland had lesser penalties in place, like forfeiting 200 pounds of tobacco, being whipped up to 39 lashes, or being kept in the stocks for up to 3 hours. In more recent times, the march towards Sunday legislation has been rapidly progressing and steadily increasing. Pope John Paul II said in the papal bull Dies Domini, or the Day of the Lord, that Christians will naturally strive to ensure that civil legislation respects their duty to keep Sunday holy. Pope Benedict in 2005 continued to champion the enforcement of Sunday by law, saying, "Society risked being enslaved to work and must recover the traditional day of rest." He continued saying, "Catholic values were not negotiable, and they must feel particularly bound to introduce and support laws based on these values. The Catechism of the Catholic Church itself states that in respecting religious liberty and the common good of all, Christians should seek recognition of Sundays and the Church's holy days as legal holidays. And this is where coronavirus comes in. Because as the world continues to sound the battle cries against climate change and against pandemics and viruses like the coronavirus, the enforcement of a day of rest will gradually become the solution that the public will demand. Why? Because pandemics will and already are being seen as a result of climate change.
In 2021, the world will start looking to life beyond the pandemic.
Future of the Earth's climate.
Climate change is caused by us. So in other words, it's up to us to make a turnaround.
Today, our focus is on climate change over the
highest temperature ever recorded.
Remember, the Pope already began inserting this idea into the public mind when he said coronavirus could be nature's response to climate change. And others are saying the coronavirus outbreak is part of the climate change crisis. Still, other articles have touched on the relationship between the virus and climate change. NBC published this article saying coronavirus shutdowns have unintended benefits: cleaner air, clearer water. CNN wrote, satellite images show less pollution over the US as coronavirus shuts down public places. In China, it's the same story, why China's air has been cleaner during the coronavirus outbreak. Venice's canal water looks clearer as coronavirus keeps visitors away, and coronavirus lockdowns continue to suppress European pollution. The streets of major cities have been dramatically emptied of traffic. Denver, Paris, Nashville, Las Vegas, and thousands of other cities are emptied. This is why it is being said global response to COVID-19 should be a model for action on climate. With lockdowns so strongly impacting the climate in a positive way, and knowing where prophecy tells us we are heading, to a global enforcement of a day of rest, it should be no surprise to see mandatory Sunday rest being promoted as the policy that will maintain these positive changes. On March 24th, coronavirus is punishment from God, Pennsylvania lawmaker suggests, calls for statewide Day of Atonement. On April 20th, the Christian Post wrote, is the pandemic God's judgment? America has 10 reasons to think so. And in this article, each of the 10 reasons are related to the breaking of each of God's 10 commandments. And therefore, in reason number 4, he states, we know no Sabbath in our 24/7 economy. He explains that we give no Sabbath. We break Sabbath by withholding relief from the burdened. So already, this pandemic, he's arguing, is a judgment of God as a result of breaking the Sabbath commandment. Perhaps well-meaning, but themselves deceived, many Christians will point to calamities on land and sea, to the storms of wind, the floods, the earthquakes, the destruction by fire, as judgments indicating God's displeasure because Sunday is not sacredly observed. These calamities will increase more and more. One disaster will follow closely upon the heels of another, and those who make void the law of God will point to the few who are keeping the Sabbath of the fourth commandment as the ones who are bringing wrath upon the world. This falsehood is Satan's device that he may ensnare the unwary. Pandemics, earthquakes, tsunamis, fires, and floods of the most awful proportions will follow one after another, and the sentiment will be advocated that were those keeping the Sabbath compelled to obey the law for Sunday observance, there would be a cessation of these terrible judgments. And with the passing of the Sunday law, the mark of the beast crisis will begin. On April 19th, author Michael Brown wrote an article published on ChristianPost.com entitled The Shutdown, the Sabbath, and a Weekly Divine Reset. And reflecting upon the busyness of his life and his frequent travel, he comments, but what happens when the shutdown ends? What happens when, if God wills, I start traveling again? The key is a weekly reset, a mini shutdown of sorts, a Sabbath rest, which in his mind means Sunday. Fox 5 News of New York posted during the pandemic saying, should all stores close on Sunday to allow staff a day off to recuperate? The local supermarket chains in New Orleans think so, as Bromart is taking a day off on Sunday. And Mayor Cam Guthrie in Ontario, Canada, took to Twitter to say, just putting this out there for considering, once we kick COVID-19's butt, I suggest that everything be closed on Sundays again so that we can appreciate the importance of what taking a pause in our busy lives really means. I think our body, mind, and soul would thank us. Puerto Rico is leading the way by connecting the idea of lockdowns with Sunday legislation. The Associated Press reports Puerto Rico to lock down Sundays. The governor, Wanda Vasquez, told the press, we have to pause to save the lives of our old people mainly. On June 17th, Crisis Magazine made a call to bring back the blue laws, in which they state there was a time when even the United States Supreme Court favored these ordinances. Justice Stephen Johnson, field writing in Hennington v. Georgia, 1896. The prohibition of secular business on Sunday is advocated on the ground that by it the general welfare is advanced, labor protected, and the moral and physical well-being of society promoted. When considering the potential for Sunday legislation, we have to remember it will not be necessarily only on the grounds of religion, but the entire world can get behind the idea of a day of rest if it is for the general welfare and health of the people and the planet. The author concludes, America, for the sake of its own emotional and spiritual welfare, for the sake of its own sanity, needs to restore the blue laws. In September of 2020, ABC News reported that the Pope made a call to use the pandemic to give the environment a vital rest. The Vatican said the COVID-19 pandemic has shown how the Earth can recover if we allow it to rest, and must spur people to adopt simpler lifestyles to help a planet groaning under the constant demand for economic growth, Pope Francis said Tuesday. The concept of curbing climate change is also heartily embraced by most Christians. Climate Sunday launches across Britain and Ireland, and this Climate Sunday initiative is a collection of over 700 churches that see the importance of coming together to combat climate change. Another organization called Green Sabbath Project says on their website, is there nothing you can do about the environment? Nothing may be one of the best things you can do. One day every week, do nothing. The idea is simple. If Sunday rest is the solution for a global problem, then the entire world will need to rest on Sunday.
We are facing an urgent crisis, one which threatens our very existence. The climate catastrophe.
The ecological crisis is essentially a spiritual problem.
And responded to the Minister of Health, was asked that we do not have commercial activity in supermarkets, hardware stores, or any stores on Sundays for now.
Grocery stores will be closed every Sunday for the whole month of April to give employees a chance to rest. And everyone says that's how it should be.
In tough battle against the virus. That's why we're announcing today that businesses will now be closed on Sundays.
Quebec Premier François Legault said closing businesses on Sundays will give frontline workers a break.
Kind of with the family, which is the family values like we used to have back in the old days, back in the 60s.
Shoppers agree that Sunday is a day for everyone to rest.
So-called blue laws, named for the color paper they used to be written on, have been on the books in New Jersey since the late 1600s.
I actually enjoy the blue laws.
I think in this consumer-driven world, we can all use a break.
Sundays is the day of the Lord.
It will be an opportunity for our workers to get some rest. Quebecers must remain united to win the battle against the virus. Everybody must follow our plan.
It will be business from Monday to Saturday, but there will be no commerce in the supermarkets on Sunday.
The big theme for September the 6th, which has been dubbed Climate Sunday.
We're well into the 6th mass extinction event.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, many people are suffering from poverty and loneliness. This is why we need fraternity more than ever. We need to care for each other, for we are all members of one human family. This is why at COMECE we are committed to promote Sunday as a common weekly day of rest in the European Union. a day that gives time for family and spiritual life.
And let them have Sunday as the day of rest while we fight this out, and let us give Sunday as the time to be able to move forward.
In view of the rising cases of COVID-19, the Madhya Pradesh government has imposed lockdown on Sunday in Bhopal. Restaurants and hotels will now function till 10 p.m. in the state. Shops in containment zone in the city will remain closed.
As nations turn to Sunday observance to curb the pandemic, the same solution is being heralded to solve climate change. CNN reported April 8th, the world is coming together to fight coronavirus. It can do the same for the climate crisis. While the coronavirus pandemic and climate change are inherently different issues, they share two important characteristics. Both are global crises that threaten the lives of millions of people. The Antichrist power needs control over the earth, which means a global form of control. And the best way to get the nations of the world to go along with a global government is to bring about a global crisis. Climate change and global pandemics are both global crises, which are meant to legitimize a global solution, which in this case is global government. On March 15th of 2021, LifeSite News reported Pope calls for New World Order, says wasting COVID crisis would be worse than pandemic. The Pope said, let us all keep in mind that there is something worse than this crisis, the drama of wasting it. And what productive change is the Pope hoping will come out of the COVID crisis? He said in relation to his new book, God and the World to Come, that we can heal injustice by building a new world order based on solidarity. The prophecies in the book of Revelation clearly state that the enforcement of the mark of the beast will be a global initiative. In chapter 13 and verse 3, we read, all the world wondered after the beast. And in verse 8, we see all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. And we read concerning a second beast power, that he causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. In the world today, the nations of earth are sovereign, in that they answer to no one, or at least that's how things used to work. Today it's not that straightforward due to the establishment of international governing bodies, like the United Nations or the Council on Foreign Relations, that drive and direct international policies, or the International Monetary Fund that seeks international solidarity in the economy, or the World Health Organization that helps to set policies and recommendations for health, and is seeking to establish universal health coverage. And even in the religious world, there is the World Council of Churches that works for the unity of Christian denominations. In the last 75 years, the world has drastically changed as the leaders of nations seek a global cohesion of governments.
Nothing less than a new world order. This is the pledge of the world's most powerful leaders.
A new world order.
A new world order.
That we needed a new world order.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
Author of a new book, it's called World Order.
Globalization is real. It's unavoidable.
A new world order for the 21st century.
Francis asking people to come together tonight as the world faces the coronavirus pandemic.
The Bible foretold 2,000 years ago that this would be the case, and we can see the rapid fulfillment of these prophecies in the headlines of today. On July 26th, we read UN Chief Guterres calls for one supreme body of global governance. The reasoning being, the world needs an overarching level of multilateral governance that can sideline problematic national interests, which is simply another way of saying global governance should supersede national sovereignty. When financial institutions merge with the international agencies, like the UN, it would surely make controlling buying and selling much easier. Henry Kissinger, a well-known globalist, was quick to say back in April of 2020, the solution to coronavirus is the New World Order, arguing that no country, not even the US, can in a purely national effort overcome the virus, Kissinger warned. Addressing the necessities of the moment must ultimately be coupled with a global collaborative vision and program. The pandemic caused by the virus with a 99% survival rate is being heralded as a global problem, which is just the fuel he wants to promote a global solution, global government. Global governance does not necessarily require countries to surrender their sovereignty to a single international organization. All it requires is cooperation to a common objective or ideal that will seem to be in everyone's best interest.
What is our mandate? I believe it's this. In the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control.
Global warming, for example, is one such ideal. A global health crisis is another means by which the nations may think it best to work together, or a global economic crisis, or perhaps all of the above. Whatever the crisis, the most restrictive laws and tyrannical plots ever conducted against planet Earth will be said to be for the good of the people. So, who will be at the head of such a movement? The Bible reveals this too. So far, we have identified the beast that rises up out of the sea in Revelation chapter 13 as the papacy of the Roman Catholic Church. However, the Roman Catholic Church is not the only power in this prophecy. John speaks of another beast. He wrote, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spake as a dragon." And the role of this second beast is then stated, "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." This second beast, when it comes on the scene, is to cause the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, which is the Roman Catholic Church. The word cause means to force or compel. So the second beast will force the inhabitants of earth to worship the Roman Catholic Church. And since obedience itself is a form of worship, the phrase "to worship the first beast" tells us the second beast or nation, whoever it is, will use its power to force all the inhabitants of earth to obey the decrees of the Roman Catholic Church. But the prophecy gives us more light on how this will happen. Just as it causeth the earth to worship the first beast, we read in verse 16, "He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads." The word causeth links these two verses together, showing us the way the second beast causes the earth to worship the first beast is by forcing the world to receive its mark in their right hand or in their foreheads. So this second beast will force the inhabitants of earth to worship the Roman Catholic Church by a law enforcing the observance of Sunday, the sign of the Church's authority, the mark of the beast. Only a nation with a lot of power and influence would be able to accomplish such a thing. So let's now identify the second beast that will cause the world to worship or obey the papacy of the Roman Catholic Church. And part of the key to identifying the second beast's power is looking at where these beasts came from. Remember that regarding the first beast, John wrote how he saw a beast rise up out of the sea. Therefore, the woman John saw sitting on the beast he described in chapter 17 as the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. Then John defines the symbol of the sea and the waters for us, saying, "The waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues." So the prophecy is telling us that the Antichrist power representing the Roman Catholic Church system would arise in a populated area with lots of people. And that it did, as it rose to power in Rome, which was the heart of the then known world. So what about the second beast that rises from the earth? If the sea or multitude of water represents a populated area, then the earth or land would represent a desolate or largely uninhabited area. In other words, the second beast, like the first, is a nation or kingdom. But rather than coming to power in a populated area or by conquest, this nation rises up in a remote area by itself. Now, with regard to the first beast, we already saw of this first beast representing the Roman Catholic Church that it would reign for 42 months. We read, "Power was given unto him to continue 42 months." And since the Bible defines a day in prophecy to be equivalent to 1 literal year, in Numbers 14:34 and Ezekiel 4:6, saying, "I've appointed thee each day for a year," then this 42-month period that began in 538 AD with the Pope's assumption of the civil power of Rome would last 1,260 years, ending in 1798, when Napoleon's general took the Pope captive. And with this, the power that was given to the first beast was ended. But John then wrote, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." If the power of the first beast ended in 1798, and another beast is now coming upon the scene, we should expect it to rise to power in a remote area about the same time, around 1798. In the notes from his own Bible, John Wesley wrote in 1754 about this second beast, "He has not yet come, though he cannot be far off, for he is to appear at the end of the 42 months of the first beast." This second beast is described in the prophecy as having 2 horns like a lamb. Throughout the Bible, and especially the book of Revelation, the lamb is to denote the meekness, gentleness, and purity of the character of Christ. Peter wrote of the precious blood of Christ as of a lamb without blemish and without spot. The second beast, when it rises to power, is a lamb-like or Christ-like beast. But the prophecy also warns that eventually, at some point, it will speak like a dragon. Who is the second beast or nation that appears with Christian principles and rises to power in a remote and uninhabited area? In a book titled The New World Compared with the Old, the author wrote on page 462, "Since America was discovered, she has been a subject of revolutionary thought in Europe. The mystery of her coming forth from vacancy, the marvel of her wealth in gold and silver, the spectacle of her captives led through European capitals, filled the minds of men with unrest." The second beast that rose to power in a remote area around 1798 is, without a doubt, the United States of America, that signed its Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776, and has become the most powerful and influential nation and civil authority on the earth to this day. Next to the Roman Catholic Church, which is considered to be the world's most authoritative moral authority on earth. The United States of America and the Roman Catholic Church have enjoyed a very cozy relationship in the last 100 years, and according to the 2,000-year-old Bible prophecies, these will be the 2 of the leading powers in the enforcement of the mark of the beast upon the world.
Certainly no one can speak with greater force to our own generation than you yourself.
But all Americans are grateful to the Catholics of this country for the standards they have set.
You said famously, when you looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes, you saw his soul. Yeah. When you look into Benedict XVI's eyes, what do you see? God.
Holy Father, we thank you and welcome you with joy and gratitude to the United States of America.
My administration will stand side by side with the American Catholics to promote the values we all share as Christians and Americans.
Look at the encyclical on climate change. It's all about, we have responsibilities.
Mr. Speaker, the Pope of the Holy See.
Now, we have so far identified the 2 beasts in the 13th chapter of Revelation that will be involved in the Mark of the Beast crisis. We have identified the first beast as the Roman Catholic Church system, and the second beast as the United States of America. The Roman Catholic Church will use its moral authority and influence to promote a counterfeit Sabbath day of worship, the Mark of the Beast. And the United States of America will use its civil power and influence to force all upon the earth to adhere to this law honoring Sunday, and in this way will fulfill the prophecy, causing the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast by receiving its mark. But now we need to consider the third and final major power in this prophecy that will bring about the mark of the beast, and that is what John called the image of the beast. An image of something is a replication of it, like an image in a mirror. The image you see of yourself in the mirror is not you, but it is a representation of you. And the same is true of the image of the beast. It is a similar representation or a replica of the beast. In this case, the two most significant characteristics of the beast's power is that it is both a church and state power, and that it uses the civil power of its government to enforce its religious mandates. This could not be more clearly demonstrated than by the more than 100 million victims tortured and killed by the Papal Church for more than 1,000 years, if they would not surrender their conscience to the doctrines of the Pope. But now, in the modern era, the second beast is seen by John, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. That is, a church and state power in the new world, similar to that which shed the blood of Christians for a millennia in the old world. Even now, the Christian influence in the policies and practices of the United States government is rapidly increasing, with the president surrounding himself with a multitude of Christian leaders and counselors to guide him in the affairs of the state.
We thank you for this nation that was born in 1776. We pray in 2020 it would be born again.
And I declare, God, that you use them to change the spiritual atmosphere of this nation.
And just as the religious priests, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees cried unto the government leaders, like Herod and Pilate, for the crucifixion of Jesus, so now will the Christian leaders and pastors and priests come to the point where they will ally themselves with the government and persuade the leaders of the state to enforce their doctrines and policies of the church.
I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me.
6 decades later, Biden put Pope Francis's picture in campaign videos and the Oval Office.
I grew up with Catholic social doctrine, which taught me that faith without works is dead.
You see the impact of Catholic social doctrine on his policies.
In order for the United States to form an image of the beast, the religious power must so control the civil government that the authority of the state will also be employed by the church to accomplish her own ends.
Evangelicals have steadily gained visibility and influence over the past 50 years, not just from the pulpit or TV, but at the voting booth. This group can sway entire elections.
If already nearly half of Americans believe the Bible should influence U.S. laws, it will be very, very easy to convince Americans to change or eliminate constitutional rights, such as the Establishment Clause, and even enforce religious tenets upon the entire nation, when they believe it to be in the nation's best interests.
It's the soul that is corrupt, and how we get back to a moral rebirth in this country, I don't know. Probably we should be debating a bill requiring every American to attend a church of their choice on Sunday to see if we can get back to having a moral rebirth.
But this state of affairs will not come about without the help of supernatural events. The prophecy concerning the United States as the second beast says, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast." Miracles will be wrought with the intention of deceiving those that dwell on the earth, making them believe that they, the people, should form an image to the beast. And among these miracles, demons will appear among men in private and in public, pretending to be departed loved ones or influential figures of the past, pleading with man to depart from his wicked ways and restore the sacredness of Sunday worship.
Diana. When the ghost actually appears, it turns out to be the ghost of Princess Diana.
The miracle-working power manifested through spiritualism will exert its influence against those who choose to obey God rather than men.
Every religious tradition, every wisdom tradition talks about these beings that come to get us when it's time to die.
She speaks with dead people, and now she says we too can communicate with lost loved ones. In her new book, There's More to Life Than This, she's teaching us how.
"Oh, when did you get here?" And I said, "I'm Dave from Hospice of the Western Reserve. I've been here for a while." And she looked at me and she said, "Not you, George." And I turned around and looked, and there was nobody behind me.
George was the patient's long-deceased husband.
He says, "And I want you, Mom,
to know that I live life through your eyes. So I want you to be happy. So know every time you smile, my soul is smiling in heaven.
The danger is that these demons will not be readily identified as demonic spirits. Almost everyone on earth has some form of belief in life after death, and that when a person dies, they do not really die, but continue to live somewhere else.
I see dead people.
In the plainest language, the Bible teaches, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. Nevertheless, ministers today repeat the teaching of the serpent when they declare, ye shall not surely die, but live on forever in another state. They point to Jesus' words on the cross, I say unto thee today, shalt thou be with me in paradise, as proof that upon death, the individual would be in paradise. But they disregard entirely statements to the contrary, such as Jesus' words to Mary after his resurrection. Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, showing that even 3 days after he died, that he had not yet ascended to his Father in heaven. Instead, the Bible teaches from cover to cover that the dead know not anything, and that there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest. Jesus himself likened death to an unconscious sleep when he spoke to the disciples about Lazarus who had died, saying, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth. The manifestations of demons pretending to be departed loved ones the Bible calls familiar spirits, and says they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And this is the purpose of these demonic spirits appearing as famous figures of the past, as the disciples of Christ, or as departed loved ones. It is to ensnare the world into receiving the mark of the beast, and to disregard entirely the Thus saith the Lord of the 10 Commandments, declaring the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. I am taking the time to share this information with you because these miracles wrought by demonic spirits will be overwhelming. And unless your faith is firmly planted on a Thus saith the Lord, you will be deceived. And I dare say that if you now believe that Sunday is the true Sabbath, and that at death a person does not rest in their grave, but lives on in some other conscious state, you are already deceived. And if already deceived, would you not readily receive the mark of the beast if it were enforced today? Communications from the spirits will declare that God has sent them to convince the rejectors of Sunday of their error, affirming that the laws of the land should be obeyed as the law of God. They will lament the great wickedness in the world and second the testimony of religious teachers that the degraded state of morals is caused by the desecration of Sunday. Great will be the indignation excited against all who refuse to accept their testimony. And in this way, the Protestant Christians in America will so control the state government that the military and civil powers of the most powerful nation on earth will be employed by the Protestants to enforce the papal day of rest. In this video on Masking the Mark, we have covered a lot of ground. We have identified the first beast in Revelation chapter 13 as the Roman Catholic Church, the world's most regarded moral authority that has presumed to have changed the Sabbath commandment of God's law from the seventh day of the week to the first. We have identified the second beast as the United States of America that will use its civil power and influence to enforce the Roman Catholic Church's day of rest on the first day of the week, bringing all the inhabitants of earth to make a final decision whom they will worship and obey just before the wrath of God is poured out upon the earth in the 7 last plagues. And we have identified the image of the beast as the apostate Protestant Christianity that will use the power of the state to urge legislation enforcing all to honor the Sunday, the mark of the beast. The Savior who gave his life for us is the same one who gave these prophecies concerning the mark of the beast, and it is his desire that we recognize and obey the commandment he gave to rest on the day he sanctified and blessed as a sign of our allegiance to him, instead of the decree enforcing the counterfeit Sabbath of the papal church that would be a sign of our allegiance to the beast that would think to change times and laws. In part 2 of Unmasking the Mark, we will take a much closer look at why the issue of the Sabbath will be the final test for mankind and the principles that are involved in making such a choice, such as what the Sabbath tells us about the God we worship, about the plan of salvation, the righteousness of Christ, and how the coronavirus pandemic is being used to prepare the world to embrace a Catholic social doctrine that will be the driving force in deceiving the world and even most Christians into receiving the mark of the beast. But we will also take a look at the heaven-sent health principles from the Bible that have the power to liberate us from the fear-driven mindset created by the pandemic. God has warned us that at this time, at the end of all things, the devil deceiveth the whole world. And therefore, the instruction of Jesus was never so momentous as today when he said, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free."